Hello, my good friends, and welcome back to the RimWorld Space Pirate series in Save Our Ship 2, baby. Where at the moment we are still currently orbiting around the planet after our daring and narrow escape from the UNSC last episode. The first order of business today was to build a chess table, that way our pirates aren't too bored when they only have the holodeck. Of course, we can't have them throwing horseshoes around on the ship, so this is a good alternative. However, our little project would be interrupted when the ship entered an asteroid field. To evade the asteroids, we would need to engage the ship's engine. Zap Zap and the others rushed into the control room. The ship was already getting pelted left and right from the asteroids. Zap Zap quickly hit the engines as fast as she could so that we could get the hell out of here. And with that, it would seem that we have finally gotten ourselves to safety, with some fairly minor damage to the hull to boot. Thankfully, our captain and a few of our other crew would have no trouble repairing it. Since we're currently eating off of our limited food storage, I decided we should probably stop making some fine meals and stick with these simple ones to try and conserve as much as possible. To try and help us out with this little problem, I also built some steel planter box in our battery/salvage bay room and built some sun lamps on the walls, that way we could try to grow some rice, although things are very cramped because of this. The idea being, of course, that we could keep our chest-loving pirates out of those cryo-sleep caskets for as long as possible, but because of the limited food, I really don't know how feasible that's going to be. I suppose we'll have to see. What was that? Trash? We have toxic waste that fell in through our salvage bay. At first, we were a bit perplexed by this, but then we had received a transmission from the Secessionist Union, the rebels fighting the UNSC. They must have taken over our old base on the ground very quickly and shot our trash back into space at us, as if to add insult to injury, the assholes. However, I am quite glad that we got all this trash, the reason being, if they know that we're hovering above the planet in orbit, that would also mean that surely the UNSC knows we're here as well. Because of this, we would actually begin making preparations for a slip space jump by putting most of our crew into cryosleep for the time being, leaving us with our current crew of the captain, Zap Zap, Sam, Henry, Tiny, Gaines, and their little baby, of course. These four have been chosen to stay out of cryosleep for the time being because their construction and planting skills are still needed before a slip space jump. I wanted to add on some additional planting boxes to our already extremely cramped room so we can begin planting more rice. Even if the crew is in cryosleep, we're still going to have to grow food for when they wake up so they can eat. We also attempted to give the food some time to grow, as well as many other opportunities, maybe to trade with some other people or possibly even rob them for their food. As you never know, we could come out of slip space and end up crashing on a planet, and it may be survival of the fittest. It was during this time that Tiny and Gaines decided to finally tie the knot as well. It was quite beautiful, except for the fact I think they were really only doing it because they were afraid that they may never wake up from cryosleep again. Nonetheless, we all had a beautiful banquet to celebrate the beautiful occasion. After that, though, it was time for their icy cold hibernation. Tiny would carefully put their beautiful baby girl in her very own pod as he and Gaines stepped into theirs. Reluctantly, it would then be time for Henry and Sam to get into their pods as well. And now the only crew that we currently have left out of hibernation is Captain Udo and First Mate Zap Zap. They would attempt to plan out coordinates to set sail towards a planet with no UNSC presence. However, there was a fear that once they entered their pods, anything could go awry, so they decided to use an AI for the ship. Not only would they activate the AI for the ship, but they would also allow it to take form, giving it a humanoid form, allowing it to interact with the world around it. Currently, it is unnamed AI, but by the end of the episode, we will be naming it with some names that were provided from you guys from a post that I actually made last night. The AI was pretty mediocre at most things, but that's okay as it should learn as time goes on. With the AI prepared to pilot our ship, it was time for us to get into our cryo-sleep caskets. What's funny here is that Zap Zap actually fit into the critter sleep casket that was meant for Jangles the Moon Monkey because I had accidentally not put enough in here. But it doesn't really matter as long as she fits into it, I suppose. Then the captain would be the last to join in on the hibernation. But now with that, all of our crew is hibernating, awaiting the order from the AI to release them from their cold slumber. It's time for us to make a slip space jump, my friends. Well, thankfully it would seem that we did make it out the other side fully intact. Not ripped apart by the gravity of a gigantic world or any space worms, and for that, we're grateful. According to the ship's AI, it took us 73 years to find another habitable world without any UNSC presence, or at least a very minor presence. Now that the journey is finally complete, the AI can go around and begin releasing the captain and the first mate from their cryosleep caskets. That way we can get things back on track around here. The AI would begin briefing the captain and the first mate about the planet that they've arrived at. Because of the specific filters given to it, it has actually brought us to a world without any primary government. Apparently this planet is a failed colony from a once great pigskin government and empire that existed in this solar system. What was left of that government was eradicated by the Covenant when they arrived here digging for one of their ancient artifacts from their gods, of course. You know how they are. What remains of the pigskin government is now shambles of pirates and droves of raiders. Sounds like our kind of people. We were going to load up our jet car and take it down to the surface to maybe do a little bit of trading with these pigskin pirates. Luckily, our jet car actually functions just like a shuttle. You may notice that it is now missing its paint job, and eventually we'll repaint it again. I suppose all those years of sitting in there, maybe it rusted away, I'm not sure. We went down to the surface, and as mentioned, all we did was trade with the pigskins, and then we would come right back, as I didn't want to use up all the fuel that we had in the shuttle car. Oddly enough, they didn't really want to purchase much from us, but we did end up purchasing an advanced component from them. This will now allow us to build yet another weapon to replace the two that we lost. We would wake Tiny up from his little nap, as he is our best at construction, and he went ahead and built us yet another cannon. Thanks, Tiny. We had also built an additional garage door onto the ship. I believe last episode I was talking about how this wouldn't actually be the equivalent of an airlock, and I didn't think that it would be, but after reloading into this save, it looks like it actually is, as we can breathe in here, so that's good. Next up though, we're actually going to be waking up Henry as well as Sam from their little naps, and we're going to be sending them down to the surface. Though cryosleep sickness appears to be taking quite the toll on young Henry here. The reason that we're sending them down is because we're actually going to have them begin collecting some resources. Henry is really good at construction, and Sam, of course, is really good at plants. Even an icy frozen planet such as this one has plenty of trees that we can cut down and convert and refine into chem fuel for our ship as well as our shuttles. Henry would waste no time getting to work on cutting down all these trees so we could actually build a temporary shelter and start on that refining as discussed. Sam would begin mining. I forgot to mention she is actually quite the miner, so we're also going to have her mine some steel to bring back home. And by home, of course, I mean our mothership in the sky. But the work ahead is going to be very tedious and difficult, so for now, we will let them rest. Back aboard the Star Reaper, though, we received transmission from a combat supplying trade ship that was in orbit around the planet. Instead of trading with them, we decided to demand that they hand over their cargo. This is an act of piracy. I suppose they would just rather hand over all of their cargo instead of having our cannons blast them or our pirates board them and take it all. Can't say I blamed them. We actually had quite a few torpedoes and some weapons and some armor, and most importantly, we had quite a bit of silver, so we were really stocked for the future. And with that, our first true act of space piracy is complete. Back on the surface, Henry and Sam were hunting some of the local wildlife to keep their tummies satiated before beginning to mine out plenty of steel. Now, before we can actually begin bringing resources like steel and fuel back to the Reaper, we're going to have to build ourselves some residential housing here in this little camp, as well as a solar panel to power the camp and a biofuel refinery to actually begin refining said chem fuel. Realistically, fuel is the least of our concerns in terms of actually bringing it back to the ship. The fuel is mostly going to be used to power our shuttle to get back and forth. But because our shuttles can't carry all that much weight, we're actually going to need a second one at the very least. It would be preferable if we had an entire fleet of them, but we'll have to make do with what we have. Back in orbit though, the ship had entered a debris field, something to be expected with a shitty little pirate planet like this. We engaged our engines to attempt to avoid them, but we did manage to get the ship hit by debris a few times. It wasn't too big of a deal. It did destroy some of the hull, but but whatever, the AI can repair it pretty easily for the most part. But after that, it was finally time for us to start bringing some resources back up to the Star Reaper. We would have Henry drop these off, and it was basically just some chem fuel, wood, and some steel. The best part about these shuttles, though, is we can actually make several trips per day, which kind of helps negate the fact that it can only carry 145 steel into orbit. Our resource base, though, would then be attacked by the Flood. Unlike the previous planet we were on, there were no Forerunner Sentinels to protect us. Thankfully, it appears that there is only a very minor Flood presence on this planet, meaning that it's most likely not been here for a very long time, but these infection forms were still very dangerous. Even more dangerous, though, were the carrier forms, containing many of these infection forms that would burst out of them when damaged. But as you know, damaging them was the only way to kill them, so I'm sure you can see the conundrum here. After a while, though, we had managed to kill all of those pesky infection forms without them getting too close. Hopefully there are no more crawling around in the shadows. We attempted to begin building yet another jet shuttle car, but this was interrupted by our very first ship battle. It would appear that an extremely fast and agile fighter vessel is approaching the Star Reaper with malicious intent. This vessel was much faster than us, and its turrets had much more range on ours, so we couldn't even shoot it from the distance we were at. You might think that maybe we should retreat, and that's what I thought at first as well. But retreating would give this fighter a good shot at our engines, meaning that they would almost definitely be destroyed, so we decided to advance on it, allowing our hull to take the brunt of the damage. As we began getting within range to fire at them, the cowards decided to flee. We lost signal of their position, and thus we knew that we were safe. The AI on board the ship would actually begin repairing the hull and replacing any of the missing components that were required. It definitely helped out quite a bit that we continued getting shipments of steel and components from the ground. Mainly just steel though, which is fine because it is the main resource that we're currently lacking to expand our ship hull even further. That and plasteel, but plasteel isn't exactly all that hard to obtain. We then had a quest from a sanguiphage named Tetsuya who wanted to meet up with two others in our resource camp and discuss some private business, if you will, and of course we don't give a shit, so we accepted for some advanced components. We allowed them to have their little meeting in one of our sheds, away from the prying eyes of any pirates that might be hiding in the bushes, or maybe the Covenant, I don't really know. But by the time the meeting had adjourned, Tetsuya actually requested to stay here with us. I have no idea as to why. This place is very shabby and awful, but we accepted, as we could always use more pirates on board the ship. We could also always arrest him at some point and sell him as a slave. Just don't tell him that though. I don't know that we're going to do that. One, he's a sanguiphage, and also he's pretty good at crafting, cooking, mining, and melee, so, you know, maybe we keep him. Either way though, we would take him back up to the Star Reaper. I forgot that he doesn't have a spacesuit on, so he got a little injured from the decompression, but as a sanguiphage, he'll heal very quickly. We allowed him to equip some armor and then jump right into a cryosleep casket to take a little snooze. Now that he's safe and sound back on board, we can actually begin mining plenty more steel from our resource base. The Orbital Traders Hub would actually contacting us asking if we wanted them to send us a trade ship. We requested a bulk goods trader and they would arrive sometime later. We attempted to threaten them and rob them on several occasions, but to no avail. They didn't even respond to our requests, so embarrassingly we would have to trade with them as normal. Once we get more weapons upon the Star Reaper and some weapons that actually have a longer distance than our current cannons, we won't be doing that anymore. We're going to start attacking those bastards if they won't listen. But for now, we were just happy to have the additional resources, as this would finally allow us to begin making expansions onto the front of our ship. But as we were doing so, we received a transmission from another pirate ship that was attempting to hail us. To our surprise, we were not met with hospitality from our fellow pirates. No, they were actually demanding 941 silver, threatening to attack us if we didn't comply. Captain Udo was enraged by this and demanded a parley through the ancient pirate code. He explained that we too were pirates and that we weren't looking for a fight, but damn it, if they wanted one, we would use all our resources to destroy them. And somehow, this parley succeeded. We had persuaded them into not attacking us, but not only did we do that, the captain was also very persuasive in getting them to trade with us as well. They were a slave ship ship, and we weren't exactly interested in buying any people for our crew, unfortunately, but we did end up purchasing some smoke leaf blunts as well as components and beer just as a sign of good faith. A very much needed stress reliever after some extremely tense negotiations with our fellow ne'er-do-wells, I'll say. Once again though, we would begin working on our expansion of the ship, leaving our salvage bay in here, but also increasing the size of our planter boxes for our food production, just as well as making this our primary room for storage and research. We woke up Zap Zap to help us out with a little bit of research. Now, my first idea here of what we should research would be transport pods, because I was thinking transport pods have a pretty high cargo weight, and if we could get those launched from the ground with all the resources we're bringing up in our jet cars, that would be so much easier and so much faster. Speaking of the surface resource base though, we were beginning to work on some turrets to help us defend this base if something were to happen, or if we were taking some resources up to the mothership and then we're not around to protect it, of course. Well, coincidentally, we ended up getting raided right in the middle of doing this. Someone called the Psych Army, apparently some other pirates that are on the planet. We don't really care, as we're not all that interested in their politics. All that we knew about these dumb bastards is that they just signed their very own death warrants. Their transport pods had went haywire, making them crash all over these mountains. Makes me wonder, did they even mean to attack us? I don't care. It sickens us to think that these bastards even dare call themselves pirates. Well, we'll be stripping that title from them as well as their souls. After watching a couple of their friends get turned into stains in the dirt, the others decided to run away. Can't say I blame them. Hopefully they'll wisen up and not try to mess with us anymore. We're the real pirates, bitch. Sometime later, and good old Zap Zap had finally finished her extensive research into transport pods, allowing us now to shoot them up into the sky or basically anywhere we pleased. After that, we began looking into researching some basic mech tech. I thought it could be fun if we really wanted to maybe build some androids and mechs to keep on board, but I don't know yet. Back on the surface, we started working on transport pods and a transport pod launcher just so we could go ahead and start sending some steel up, but unfortunately I realized that the transport pod's reach is just below space, which I'm pretty sure I knew about ahead of time and just completely forgot, so we're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way and just continue bringing them up by our shuttles. Which is fine, I suppose, though I don't think the captain's going to enjoy this news that that little plan failed. Maybe some of the skulls of our enemies, some exotic beef from the planet, and a Forerunner axe will make him happy. And so it did. Kind of. He was definitely pretty happy with decorating our ship with the skulls of those foolish enough to try and attack us. And you know, really, I think that these will put a smile on everyone's faces. We would then actually go over to the Covenant to do a little bit of trading with them. We were looking for some gold as we would need it for our multi-analyzer on the ship. We did have some previously, but we had used it up for the car wiring that we used to make our shuttles, unfortunately. Quite alright though, as we ended up bringing up 20 gold along with the other resources that we had packed from the surface, and we had our AI bring it inside for us. We would then wake Tiny up once more from his cryo sleep to help us out with building it, and then boom, we once again had a multi-analyzer allowing us to research advanced research once more. This time around, the research would be plasma turrets, as we wanted to build them onto our Star Reaper. The reason being they actually have a medium range compared to the short range of our current cannons that are attached. The Star Reaper is a very big and slow ship, so we can't exactly catch up with fighters. We need to be able to shoot them from a distance. We would actually start working on a new vehicle that could travel to space and also carry a good bit more cargo than we currently could with our shuttles, but we ended up having a ship battle. It would seem that it is once again yet another fighter coming to attack us and try to torment us. But this time the fighter was pretty close to the surface of the planet, and thus we concocted a plan. We would send our shuttles up to attack it for us. Though this little operation wouldn't come without its problems. One of the crew members came out with a UNSC rocket launcher and attacked Henry head-on. Thankfully though, Sam managed to snipe him in the head and kill him, splattering his blood into the void. Because of the engines firing with the AI inside the ship, we couldn't go around the back where the airlock was, where it was almost definitely much easier to blow a hole in the ship. No, instead we would have to do it directly from the side right through the hole. We would, however, make a little bit of an oopsie-daisy. After entering the ship, we still decided to try and blast through the airlock, but as you can see, it ended up destroying the chem fuel generators, which not only damaged us a little bit, but it would also cause the ship to lose all power, which also means that the ship is beginning to lose its orbit around the planet and starting to crash towards the surface. Sam would have to quickly try to hack into the console, and thankfully this ended up working, giving us a little bit more time, 1.3 days to be more specific. But because there's no power, neither Sam or Henry would be able to move the fighter to our location. Luckily, this is where our salvage bay will come in handy, and we can use the Star Reaper to move it itself, which of course we would end up doing, and now we have the entire fighter vessel that we could try to salvage for parts. Or maybe something else, but that'll be in a moment. As for right now, we do have more pressing issues, like the fact that our Star Reaper was damn near cut in half towards the back end where our engines are by this fighter. It took a very long time, but eventually we did replace all of the missing hull, and I began to wonder why we even bother painting it until we get a massive shield around the ship, because we just have to keep replacing it and then we'll have to repaint it. You get the point. But using the salvage bay of the Star Reaper, I decided that I wanted to add this fighter onto the front of our ship, and basically the exact same size and design as what we already planned out, so it worked out perfectly. Not only that, but we're still currently right slap dab in the middle of researching plasma turrets, and this little fighter already has 2 of them equipped. The only issue, of course, being that we would have to deconstruct those engines. I wish that we could reinstall them somewhere else, but it does make sense that we can't, and of course we would have to add in our hull plating at the bottom and just kind of shape it how we want it to look. Well worth all the trouble. And after it was all said and done, by the end of it, I was pretty happy with how the Reaper turned out. Of course, like I mentioned, I would like to try and keep the paint job as black and red, but we keep getting attacked so often and our hull is getting destroyed so often that I just don't really feel like it's a feasible thing to do right now to continue painting it, but we'll try to get some shields pretty quickly. But for now, we have some naming to do. First up, we have our little baby that is named Baby, who we're actually going to be nicknaming Jingles. Now, with that being said, though, this is simply the baby's nickname. The first name of the baby is still currently Baby. I could change that, but to be honest with you, I kinda like it being the child's first name. We could call them Baby Jingles. It seems like the quirky type of names that pirates might give to a child, but of course this didn't come from me. This comes from our good friend FoK3678, who just said that we should name the baby Jingles. I like to think that this is something of an homage to Jangles, the moon monkey, though. Next up, we'll also be giving a name to the ship's AI. We're going to be naming him Adam, A-D-A-M. Now this abbreviated name comes from our compadre Boom Gaming 144 and actually stands for Absolute Destruction, Annihilation, and Mayhem. A very badass and fitting name for a ship AI of the Torturous Marauders. We also have a little bit of lore to go over. First up from Evige Enclave Soldier, who says that the crashed starship from a few episodes that we were deconstructing to build our ship could possibly be a UNSC warship, and that's why they came to try and reclaim the wreckage while we were there. Now, I don't know how accurate that is because the starship wasn't green with the typical UNSC style. However, I do believe it's very possible that it may have been some type of civilian contractor ship, which would make sense. So I do believe you're correct, my friend. I just think that we may have misidentified who was flying the craft, but it is under the UNSC. And finally, we have some lore from our friend Vocal Fox 94, who was saying that our pirates Bad Luck and Gaines, who were previously ODSTs, were actually nearly ready to desert the UNSC by the time that they had dropped on our town. Bad Luck especially had sworn to themselves that this was going to be their last drop. As their call sign suggests, none of their operations had went smoothly. When the rest of their squad left them for dead, that sealed the deal for the 2 of them, that if the UNSC didn't care about them, they wouldn't be heading home. The only reason they took any time at all to recruit was because they were inclined to just try their luck with the outsiders. I really like this lore in particular because I feel like it perfectly explains why these elite ODSTs would even be conceiving of the possibility of joining us. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I really love all the lore, of course, don't get me wrong, and I want to thank all of you for providing it. It's really useful, and I think it really helps just expand everything further, and it's a hell of a lot of fun, so thank you everyone who provided any. And remember, of course, if you guys want to provide some lore or names or any suggestions at all, feel free to do so in the comment section down below. And even if I don't get to it in the next episode, I'll try to get around to it if I'm going to add it at some point, and I'll of course, be sure to mention you guys. And once again, I want to thank you guys ever so much for watching, though. I love you guys. I hope to see you in the next episode. Goodbye.